The amount of Connor story edits that will be in this. He leaves post-it notes, like passive-aggressive post-it notes on her car, like every day. Her cowboy husband, who's from New England. I'm a dog person, so. Our narrator is just so insufferable. Hello, welcome back to another monthly reading wrap-up. My name is Carrie. Thank you for being here. Slightly different background. I actually just moved my bookshelf in my living room, and I've been kind of living on this couch recently because I've been doing a lot of book live reading reactions, and I've just literally have become one with this couch, so I just didn't feel like moving into my bedroom to film. This month, so interesting. I started this month in the US. So of course I had a very multiple long flights. So I actually read a lot just because I was trapped in an airplane for a very long time. I've also got some DNFs that I feel like perhaps I will talk about in the middle. I'm going to have like a intermission of DNFs. And then I have one book that unfortunately I was not able to finish before this video. We're going to talk about that obviously at the end. But yeah, a lot of these, March was a month of highly anticipated reads. So very excited to dive into it. One of them is one of my most anticipated books of the entire year. So very excited to talk about that. And it brings me to the sponsor of this video, which is Book of the Month. So I talk about Book of the Month all the time. I have a Book of the Month book hiding right there. Book of the Month is a book subscription service. So they have a team that goes through all of the new releases and they will pick from a variety of genres, and you are able to pick one or more titles for a low controlled price. They're always going to be hardcover, new releases from beloved authors or from brand new authors. And this month, actually last month as well, but this month in particular, absolutely diabolical. How they were trying to make us choose between all of these books. First of all, before I get too heated about this, you can go to bookofthemonth.com. You can use the code 100 to get your first book for 100 cents, which is $1 for those who can do math. Use the code 100. My jaw dropped when I saw this list. First of all, I'm gonna show you, I ended up getting an arc of this. Luckily, it made my choice a little bit easier. We're gonna talk about it, my most anticipated read of the entire year, Yesteryear. You can get it for $1 on Book of the Month, okay? They also have the new Ilona Andrews, This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me, which I mentioned on my most anticipated fantasy reads of the year. They have a lot of like lit fic, some horror, a lot of really interesting fantasy this month. So what did I end up picking? It has 100 on it in case I forgot the code. I picked Mad Mabel. It says sanity is subjective, and it's apparently about this old woman who may or may not have committed a lot of murders, and she believed she was going to get away with it because she's going to die soon. And then this like teeny toddler moves into her neighborhood and is just like pesky. Oh, excuse me, she's not a toddler, she's 7 years old, but she starts to like ask too many questions. And will they become friends? Will they become enemies? I just like something about old woman versus 7-year-old made me laugh. So Mad Mabel. And then another highly anticipated read that I'm so glad to get my hands on is The Ending Writes Itself. This, I believe, is a collaboration with V.E. Schwab. Yes. It's a collaboration with V.E. Schwab and Kat Clark. V.E. Schwab is a best-selling author and Kat Clark is a screenwriter. They have collaborated to tell a bit of a murder mystery. I believe it's about a bunch of people who go to an island. It's kind of like a locked door. Yeah, 6 authors, 1 private island, 72 hours to write the ending that will change their lives. So I picked 2 dark books, but truly Book of the Month. Last month they had Catherine Walsh's How to Write a Love Story. Like they have amazing picks, and sometimes you can even get the book in your hands before the official publishing date. Stunning. So once again, bookofthemonth.com, you can get your first book using the code 100. Get that book for $1, 100 cents, okay? We're gonna dive in, we're gonna talk, believe me, we're gonna talk about this later. In we go to what I read in March. Okay, starting off in March, I was still in the US at this time. I was just hanging out with my dog. There had been a blizzard, so we weren't really going anywhere. Just a lot of lazy reading days. And I think that this book was very appropriate for that kind of feeling, which is Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter. This is by the same author as Emily Wilde. And it definitely was cozy. It definitely was slow. It definitely had a lot of cats. But I think that this one fell just a teeny bit short for me, unfortunately. I ended up, in my notes, I wrote that I think I liked the side characters more than the main ones. This takes place in Montreal in, I think, the 1920s, and it's about a woman who runs a cat shelter. And this is like a fantasy world, so there are wizards, and I guess whenever they duel, oftentimes buildings can be destroyed, and in this case, her building was damaged during a wizard fight, so she needs to find a new place to house her cats. Nobody will take her except for this one place. You know, if nobody in the city is willing to house your cat shelter and then this one is like, oh my, we would love to, something is wrong. And sure enough, it turns out that that building is actually a front for like a magic shop. And so she just has these weird people coming in and out of her cat shelter all the time, not getting cats, but going into a back room and then never coming out. She finds herself in between two feuding wizards, I guess, and she's not having it. She wants her cats left in peace. So very similar to Emily Wilde, I think that this had a very kind of Howl's Moving Castle dynamic to it. Even the way that our main wizard is described, he was Howl in my mind, like covered in jewelry, a little bit, you know, annoying. And just to further the Howl similarities, I wrote, it's very Howl coded to the point where if you know the trope, it didn't feel tired, but sort of like, oh, I know the end to this joke. So there are certain things that happen in this book that it's so obvious where we're going to tie back into that. I wrote that I think this is a book that you need at the right time, and I just don't think that this was the right time. And I just didn't super believe the romance. I will say there were elements to this. There are elements of grief that I thought were handled so beautifully, and I cried, like the book made me cry. But it was just strange that kind of like the side characters and like the smaller bits of the plot were what were really strong for me. And then the actual main plot and main relationship and main characters kind of did nothing for me. So it was fine in terms of if you need a cozy fantasy, but it really, unfortunately, didn't grip me in any way, shape, or form. So that was Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter. Gorgeous cover, accurately represented cats in my opinion. But maybe I'm a dog person, so that could have had an influence. And then after that, I was kind of in a reading slump, like nothing was really grabbing my attention. And I mentioned this on Instagram and someone gave me a brilliant recommendation, and thank you so much because this really helped jostle me out of a reading slump. I read Princess Floralinda and the 40-Flight Tower. This is a novella by Tamsyn Muir, author of Gideon the Ninth. Where is she? Where is Tamsyn? Where's Alecto? I have many questions for this woman, but I'm being patient. Princess Floralinda and the 40-Flight Tower is a new take on the princess in a tower motif. We have a princess. She was kidnapped by a witch, brought to a tower. She's placed at the top, and all 40 floors, or 39 floors, I guess, have a different mythical beast that the princes will have to fight their way through to rescue the princess. And we are just with the princess as she waits. And I know that sounds really boring, but once she realizes that waiting is not going to get her anywhere, and it seems like the world has straight up run out of princes because nobody's coming for her, she gets a little crafty. And the way that it ended, I was a little bored in the middle, to be honest, because it gets a little repetitive when we're fighting, like each floor, we have to fight a different mythical creature. But I thought that the ending was really clever. I thought that it was an appropriate way to end that story because let me tell you, the princess is not likable a lot of the time. And I just really appreciated how it ended. And yeah, it didn't quite have the same type of humor as Gideon the Ninth, but it was still funny. So I wouldn't go into this hoping that Tamsyn is going to fill the hole in your heart that is there for Alecto to fill. But it's still a really good time and it just helped jostle me out of a reading slump. So very thankful to it. I think it's like 100-something pages. I read it as I was waiting for my flight at the airport. So that is Princess Floralinda and the 40-Flight Tower. And then you know what happened. I got on an airplane. What am I going to read? Thank God Ali Hazelwood exists. Love that she seems to be taking a break absolutely love that for her. It's weird to not have a constant rollout of Ali Hazelwood books, but one of her books that was only available as an audiobook has now been released as a physical book. And so I was able to get a hold of that, and that was Two Can Play. This is another novella. I really wish this was longer. I've said this about all of her novellas, so no surprises here, but I just really, really wish it was longer. This is about a girl who works for a video game company, and this company needs to work with their rival company to collaborate to make this game. And the game is based off of a book series that is so important to this girl. She doesn't care if she has to work with Satan himself. She is going to do justice to this story. And surprise, surprise, one of the guys on the rival team feels exactly the same way, except they hate each other. They've had some run-ins in the past that have not been amazing. And so basically, they are forced to go on a work retreat, these two creative teams, to prove that they can work together or prove that they can't. And then the production company is going to choose between them. It was a classic Ali Hazelwood book, but because it's a novella, everything was just compacted and I really didn't want it to be. Honestly, I wish it was longer simply so that we could have gotten more talk about the book and the video games and like their philosophies on like design and things like that. Like I really loved that part of the book is when they were talking about these characters that they really resonated with as children, and I kind of wanted more of that, but it became very quickly like slight yearning, miscommunicate. The entire there's many layers to it, but the entire book is miscommunication, all the ways you can miscommunicate. So everything just seemed to move really quickly and resolve really quickly, and I just wanted to hear more of their thoughts, more of the characters. But it was fine. Like my main complaint is just it was too fast. So that is Two Can Play. I'm not going to reread it, probably not going to be one of my favorites of Ali Hazelwood, but certainly pass the time and stop with the novellas, babe. Give us the full-length books, please. And next up, because we had a 6-hour flight and then a 12-hour flight, I had time to read another book, and I read And Now Back to You. So famously, I did not enjoy First Time Caller. I had such a mixed reaction to First Time Caller because I love B.K. Borison. Love Light Farms, that entire series. I've reread those books, which is, I don't really reread romances. It's a testament to B.K. Borison and the world and the characters that she created. So I had really high expectations going into First Time Caller, and unfortunately I think she put a lot of work into making one character really complex and amazing and really well fleshed out, and so our main male character little lackluster. It's the sort of thing where you have like your best friend who's this wonderful amazing person and she's just dating a guy. You know, that was the feeling. So going into And Now Back to You, I liked the world, I liked the radio show in Baltimore, but I went in with, I think, more realistic expectations, and that really helped me out. And Now Back to You follows the weatherman for the radio station, who I really liked. So I'm glad that we followed his character. We have him, and then we have the kind of weather girl for the TV station, okay? And they are brought together because in order to boost both of their ratings, basically, they are going to become storm chasers. There's supposed to be this crazy winter storm, and they are going to be sent into the thick of it, into Appalachia, to cover it live. They hate each other because, according to our radio boy, she is a clumsy, crazy mess. And according to our weather girl, he is way uptight and rude, and honestly kind of a creep because he leaves post-it notes, like passive-aggressive post-it notes on her car like every day because they share a parking lot, and apparently she always parks over the line and he hates it, so he lets her know every day, which is interesting behavior. So I actually really liked it until it got steamy. And then I felt like our radio man completely changed personality. It's one of those things where the second we get into the bedroom, the man does a complete 180. Like the whole point of his character, he's kind of bumbling and shy and anxious, and literally when you put a microphone in front of him, he freezes, and it was just very endearing. But all of a sudden in the steamy scenes, he was like Mr. Confident, and you know, it didn't seem like a smooth transition for his character. So yeah, I liked it until then, unfortunately. And interestingly, I liked the main character from the previous book a lot more in this one. I think his name was Adam. Adam was born to be a side character. I'm sorry. I don't think he should have been a main character. He's great as a side character. So I feel like it kind of healed my relationship with Adam. But yeah, I liked it. It has to deal with really toxic bosses that do horrible things to you, which like triggered. I've been there. But yeah, it was very fun to read, especially since I had just gone through the first blizzard I've ever experienced in my entire life a week prior. So them talking about the snow and sledding and all of this stuff, it was pretty great. But yeah, I unfortunately don't think that this series, I think she has one more in the series. I'm not sure it's my favorite. I technically like the setup, like again, a radio studio, like a radio show, just sounds so fun. But it's missing something. But again, her side characters are great. I thought that the sisters, our radio man has some sisters that he is the guardian of. Thought they were great. Loved their relationship with our main female character. So there were a lot of highlights, but I think just as a whole, this didn't knock my socks off. That is, and now back to you. After that, I had time to crack open an arc that I got that I've been so excited for. This is Behind Five Willows. This is Korean Joseon Dynasty meets Pride and Prejudice. I had an okay time with this one. I think that the pacing was a little funky, but I really appreciated the amount of research that must have gone into this because I felt like I learned so much. I think that Junher does a really good job of mashing history with fiction for her historical fiction. So I really liked all of the characters, but I just wasn't sure if it flowed. It felt like we got a lot of nothing really happening and then a lot of action at the end. We're essentially following the beats of Pride and Prejudice, but this takes place in the late 1700s in Korea, where the government was banning fiction because they felt like fiction was very dangerous. It could insert a lot of ideas into people's minds that weren't aligning with the kind of general philosophy that the government wanted us to follow. And so people had to rely on these hidden bookstores as well as transcribers, because even though Korea did have the printing press, did create the printing press before Germany, I would say, even though they had that, it was only allowed for government use. So any book, if you wanted a copy, had to be transcribed by hand. And what's interesting is that transcribers would simultaneously like edit the book and also add a little bit of their personality to it. So you would have favorite transcribers, which I thought was so cool. So we are following Black Lotus, who is a fiction author, and his favorite translator or transcriber, Magpie. Let's just say once they find out each other's identities, shit hits the fan a little bit. So like I said, I liked all of the characters individually, but I just unfortunately didn't love the pacing. I really enjoyed, though, all of the historical aspects of it. I learned a lot. I think that Korea has such a long history that I'm never going to run out of things to learn. And this was just really fascinating. And so if you like books about books, like so much of this story was just talking about how important fiction is. I appreciated so many aspects of the book. I just don't think it was for me. Perhaps a younger audience might like it a little bit more. I just felt like, especially in the middle, I was sort of waiting for something to happen. That was Behind Five Willows. I had a good time, but not a great time. And then I started to read two of my most anticipated reads of the entire year. So I'm going to take this moment to do our DNF intermission, talking about the three books that I didn't finish this month. Starting with, so unfortunately, I'm so sad that this didn't hit. I DNF'd Queen of Faces. This had a fascinating premise. I really wish I could have pushed through, but it was like making me anxious and extremely claustrophobic. So I couldn't continue. Queen of Faces is about a fantasy world in which you can change your body. Everyone is born with a body, but then you can change it in some way. You can buy a new body and just like migrate your soul essentially into a new one. We're following our main character whose birth body, she had some kind of terminal illness, and her mother scraped every single coin that they had together to get her another body simply so that she could live. But she ended up getting an equally cheap and broken body, unfortunately. And so now she works kind of as a servant and is just trying to figure out how to live while literally her body, she has like necrosis or whatever. Like her body is literally turning gray and dying. All right. And all she can think about is how much she wants to go to the magical school, which is very, very difficult to get into. She's already taken the test multiple times, and a lot of really unfortunate and dangerous things happen that leads her to a possible opportunity to get in. But at what cost? The reason I had to DNF this is because, how do I even explain this? It wasn't a pacing issue. It was literally like scenes. There was no sense of a physical world. The scene in which I decided I had to put the book down, I think I got about 30% of the way through, but there's a scene where one of the characters is in a swimming pool having a conversation with somebody, and then I think she gets out of the pool. I'm not sure. The conversation never stops, and then all of a sudden they're like walking in the downtown district, but the conversation has not stopped. There was no skip in the conversation. It was literally like, hey, what's up, girl? Do you want to go get some tea? Yeah, I love tea. What flavor tea would you want? Oh, I think I want to get green tea. And in the midst of that conversation, we went from swimming pool to like a mile away in town. I don't know how to describe it. Like there were so many scenes like that where our main character would walk out the front door and then she'd be standing on the side of a cliff and then she would be somewhere else. And it was just like, where are we? It was very bizarre, and it genuinely made me like, I could not get into the story because I'm such a visual person that I was just like, I can't do it. So yeah, really unfortunate that I think my brain just couldn't get past that really strange sense of space, because it was a really interesting concept. And I know that I stopped right as the action, like we basically got the introduction to the world, and then the second the action was about to begin is when I had to tap out. So I would still recommend it. It just, for me, literally my brain could not process it. And I'm upset about that because darn, I love a new magic system. So that is Queen of Faces. Let me know if you read it and tell me how it was, because it felt like it was leading up to something really cool. So Queen of Faces. And then after that, this was simply a case of not being in the mood for this particular type of book, and also my library hold ran out. So I started reading Patsy. It was really good. Unfortunately, I just wasn't quite in the mood for literary fiction. This was also like right before I was going to get on my flight, so it felt just, I was a little discombobulated, my head wasn't in the game, and then I ran out of time at the library. So Patsy, I read probably 30, if not 40% of this book. Really good. This is about a Jamaican mother who moves to New York City in, what did I write down? Yeah, the late 1990s. She essentially leaves her daughter behind in Jamaica as she goes to live with her best friend in Brooklyn. Best friend, potentially lover, I think, in Brooklyn. Her best friend is married to a scumbag, absolute scumbag. And it's just about her journey being in Brooklyn, looking for work. I'm assuming, hopefully, maybe trying to bring her daughter to Jamaica, but she's a really complex character. Like you get the feeling that she really wanted to go to Brooklyn to just completely rewrite her story and erase herself in Jamaica. So is she interested in bringing her daughter to the US? Unknown. I don't know. It was genuinely really interesting. Like each character felt so real, and I had a lot of feelings toward every single character in this book. It just wasn't the right time. So I'll definitely return to it. Wasn't in the cards for March. So that is Patsy. Definitely check it out, especially if you are in Brooklyn. I was kind of mad that I didn't read this while I was in Brooklyn last month. Very atmospheric, and I want to know how it ends. So I will be returning. Patsy. And my final DNF is one that it's a soft DNF, and honestly, I still have 6 days left on my library hold. I might try and finish it. I'm reading Spoiled Milk. This is a horror novel about a group of girls living in at a boarding school, and their most beloved, like, queen bee kind of character dies. Was it an accident? Was it murder? And as the girls try and investigate it, the boarding school just gets more and more dark and creepy and gruesome. I'm really interested in how it ends, but unfortunately our narrator is just so insufferable. Our narrator is sort of like the queen bee's second in command. She just has horrible thoughts about every other girl. Like, she has no friends. She hates all the other girls. And so it was just a lot to, it kind of starts slow, and for it to be slow plus having an absolutely insufferable narrator, I had to put it down, especially because I got a book that I really wanted to read in from the library. And so I kind of, my mind was on that book instead. It's still out from the library. I still got it for a couple more days. I want to finish it, but we'll see. I have just like a never-ending flow of books coming in from the library that I kind of want to read more than it. So we'll see. That was Spoiled Milk. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for. The moment I've been waiting for. Yesteryear. I am so excited. Thank you, Emily at DB Books, for getting this in my hands. So I have known about this book for a while because I am an avid listener of Diabolical Lies, a podcast hosted by this author and her friend Katie. So many of the podcast episodes are basically our author, Caro. She basically was doing research for this novel and then would just go down a rabbit hole and would make a podcast episode about it. So if you listen to Diabolical Lies and you read this, you will know so much because it was like we were on the research journey with her. This is all about trad wives, and specifically like trad wife influencers. Caro has a bit of an obsession with ballerina farms, for example. If you've heard, I heard of ballerina farms through this podcast. Luckily, that's like not really where my FYP takes me. And so we are essentially following a trad wife influencer as she is living on her farm, living her life. She's on baby number like 7 or 8. And we see kind of the behind the scenes of how she makes this social media life work. And then things go horribly, horribly wrong. And I don't want to give you too much because honestly, the journey going in knowing nothing is a lot of fun. I inhaled this. I literally went to a cafe and almost finished it. Like I did not move. It's so interesting because our narrator is our trad wife. And so she's able to talk us through how she got to where she is. And you can kind of get in her head in terms of things that to me seem unreasonable. The way that she talks about faith in here is really interesting. The way that she talks about like her goals and what she sees as failure, what she sees as success, especially when it comes to being a good woman. Really, really fascinating. I think the ending, I wasn't mad about it, but I wasn't wowed by it. I am happy for bits of the ending, and I kind of wish that it ended a little bit differently for other characters. Just overall a really stunning debut, especially the first half. The way that it's written, because we are following her present day, but we're also following her when she's in college, and really how she goes from like trying to be, I think she went to Harvard actually, how she goes from being what seems like to be on a traditional path of someone who is studying liberal arts and going on to be a career woman, etc. How does she veer so far off of that path and into living on a farm with her millions of kids and her cowboy husband? Her cowboy husband who is from New England. So, and yeah, I think a really, really incredible debut. And then if you haven't listened to the podcast and you really liked the topics that were covered here, you've got so many rabbit holes to go down, talking about childbirth, talking about trad wives, talking about the texification of America. Oh my God, if you want to listen to a podcast episode that will get your blood boiling, there you go. I really enjoyed. It is called The Stepford Wives Meets The Handmaid's Tale, and I kind of agree. I think Handmaid's Tale is thrown around willy-nilly these days, but pretty damn close. So this is Yesteryear by Caro Claire Burke, and it is coming out in April. It's in the book of the month pickings for April. You can use the code 100. Just saying. Thank you again to DB Books, in this case, for getting the ARC in my hands as soon as possible. Next up, another highly anticipated read. I read this the day it came out. Thank you very much. How to Write a Love Story. This is by Catherine Walsh, who I talk about all the time. She is the queen of Christmas romantic comedies, and she has been a self-published author, I believe, but How to Write a Love Story is her traditional debut. It was in Book of the Month last month, by the way. This was solid, a solid rom-com. It is about a man living in the US who is an editor, book editor, and a woman living in Ireland who is trying to finish the final book of her father's beloved fantasy series. He basically in his will was like, I want this finished. I've mapped most of it out. The only person I want to write it is my daughter. And she is in a big ol' writing slump. And so the publishing house sends this editor over to Ireland, basically light a fire under her ass. All right, get this book done. So it's very much like small town, Irish countryside, collaborating to write a book, etc. Very cozy vibes, lots of really great side characters. This was significantly less goofy. I think that Catherine Walsh's previous characters have all been a little over the top, like a little bit unhinged in a great way. They felt real, but there was an element to them that was so comical that it felt like truly like romantic comedy side characters that, you know, they just say the weirdest things and do the weirdest things. So her previous books have all been like laugh out loud, silly, I think. This one was less goofy. I don't know if maybe for trad publishing, she reeled it in a little bit, but this is also the first book that covers a really heavy topic. Our main character is dealing with grief and the death of her father and coming to terms with the fact that maybe she didn't have the childhood that she wanted, and like just heavier topics than she's ever covered before. So I do think that she did a really good job balancing romance, comedy, and the grief. It just wasn't as like Catherine Walsh as her previous books were. I really liked our two main characters, but I felt like the romance came a little bit out of nowhere. Overall, I wanted it to just be a little bit more rom-com-y, and this was a little bit more almost like, not to compare every romance book to Emily Henry, but this felt a little bit more like where Emily Henry tries to blend genre a little bit. So I liked it. I think if you've never read Catherine Walsh before, you would really enjoy it. But if you've read all of her books and were expecting something as laugh out loud as holiday romance, for example, not quite. But a solid traditionally published debut, and I will always be excited for everything that she writes. And she just got a puppy, so please support her work so that she can buy her puppy lots of toys. Thank you. Next up, I read Daggermouth. I have a whole video on it. You can read it along with me. This is another entry into the dystopian romance category. This was entertaining. I'll give it that. Nonsensical though, unfortunately. I think the only other dystopian romance that I have read is Silver Elite, which I also did a video on. Silver Elite had the great combination of not being entertaining and also not having any logical or solid world building, especially when you're trying to be dystopian. Typically I would assume that there would be some kind of talk about social justice or political systems or things like that. And okay, no. Daggermouth tried. Daggermouth was entertaining, which is great, and it attempted to talk about societal issues and political systems and revolution and things like that. Unfortunately, none of it made sense. At least there were just a lot of details that were added that just logically don't make sense. So unfortunately I could not get into it, but give it a try. This is I think a traditionally published debut, which is exciting. Also, someone pointed out this may or may not be a Nightwing fanfic. I don't know Nightwing. I just learned about what that was through the video. But if you like Nightwing, here you go. Daggermouth. Yeah, unfortunately, I had a good time reading it, but do not try to have a lick of logic. Don't try to understand the world at all. If you like world building, it's just going to piss you off, unfortunately. But excited that so many other people like it because this is doing numbers on Goodreads. And that's fab. If you don't want to read it, you can watch my video. So that is Daggermouth. After Daggermouth, I had hit after hit after hit, which never happens, especially since this was kind of a slow moving month. Starting with I will also say dark after slightly cozy. Starting off with All the Sinners Bleed. This is by S.A. Cosby, who's been on my to read list for a very long time. A lot of people recommended this as a book that we should read for our monthly thriller video, and I'm so glad that I read it privately. I'll talk about it a little more in next week's video when I'm reading a thriller, but I appreciate that the thrillers we've covered so far have been a little goofy, a little camp. This one was not. And so I am really glad that this was one that I processed in the comfort of my own private reading experience. All the Sinners Bleed. We are in the South. It is present day, and we are following this small town's sheriff. He's been recently elected. He is the town's first Black sheriff. Most people not really too happy about that. And he has to deal with this interesting dynamic of the white folks in town don't like him because he's a Black man. The Black folks in town don't like him because he's a Black man that became a cop. And as we've seen by the actions of law enforcement in the US, it's an inherently racist system, right? So he has to kind of walk this line. And not only that, he has to deal with now what looks to be a serial killer. And these murders, the crimes committed, are really, really dark. A lot of this has to deal with all different kinds of violence towards children, like really the worst stuff that you can imagine. The sheriff actually doesn't let a lot of the other cops even look at some of the evidence because he's like, you will never recover from seeing the things that I saw. So, a very dark book. Beautifully written, stunning. Our sheriff is also dealing with a lot of religious trauma in a town that is, you know, a southern religious small town. Especially his father has returned to the church, things like that. He's just like being attacked by all sides, literally like from above even. Just a really complex, interesting character. I really enjoyed it. It was so visual. Like from the very opening scene, I felt like I was watching it as if it were a movie. Just a really, really stunning thriller, but so dark. Truly just an amazing book, but be prepared. And then after that, I went into a book that was darker than I thought it was going to be. And that is You Did Nothing Wrong by C.G. Drews. I have loved everything that C.G. Drews has touched. Don't Let the Forest In and Hazelthorn. And so when I heard we were getting an adult debut and it was going to be about a haunted house, I was locked in. And this book was not what I expected. And not in a bad way. But I think people will have really strong opinions about this book. Someone told me that in an interview or something, C.G. Drews actually said that they didn't know if this book would ever be allowed to be published because of the subject matter. And I can see why. I don't want to spoil it because I think that is the magic of being on the journey and figuring it out yourself. But I will say if you need to look up triggers, I would do it, especially pertaining to motherhood and pregnancies and children with special needs. I would say it's rough. Like, I don't know how I would feel if I were like a young mother or like a mother with a very young child reading this. Like, I don't know how it would make me feel. I don't plan on having kids. So, and it even made me uncomfy. You did nothing wrong. The most I can tell you is we are following a mother and her young child as they move from Australia to, I believe this takes place in Virginia, to live with her new husband. They're like in his like family home that he is renovating. So this house is immediately creepy and is also half demolished. It's not just dangerous in that it feels creepy, but it's dangerous in that like if her 6-year-old son, I think he is, if he wanders into the wrong room, he could like fall in a hole in the floor that's being repaired, you know? So it's like everything about this house is a little unsettling. And the story really revolves around this mother and son, and the son has some behavioral issues. He really just acts out all the time. And we're in the head of the mother. The mother is our narrator, and she loves her son with just a intensity of, you know, a mother and their first child, but she also hates her son and is tired and is not sure if she can take another day, let alone another hour, being a mother. She's also pregnant, and it's just a lot and really uncomfortable, especially the way that she talks about her son. And as the story unfolds and we are spending more and more time in this house, I don't want to tell you too much more. If anybody wants to talk about it in the comment section with spoiler warning, write spoiler and then like ... and then write things. I'm just so interested in what people think. I think that the author's note, don't skip that. When you finish the book, read the author's note as well, because that's what really got me to understand what this book was about. It's one of those books where like I didn't like it. It made me think. It's gonna stick with me for a very long time. So I think that it has value in that sense for sure. It's very different from Don't Let the Forest In and Hazelthorn. Those are both kind of like fantastical. They're dark, but they're kind of fantastical. The writing is very flowery and just all over the place. This one just felt very, even the writing was just very rooted in reality. It didn't get too flowery or over descriptive. It was very to the point. So it really was a different voice. And I think that it works for their adult debut, but ooh, I think it's really going to start some interesting and uncomfortable conversations that I would like to be a fly on the wall for. I don't know if I'd want to join in, but I'd love to hear what other people think. That is You Did Nothing Wrong. And then after that, my body and soul was like, oh my God, read something lighter, please. And so I went in for a cozy murder mystery. This was recommended by quite a few of you, actually. This isn't a new book, so I don't know why. I think because this author just released another book and people are kind of going back into her older catalog. This is a couple years old. I read The Briar Club. I had a really good time with this one, and I highly recommend, especially if you are interested in reading about like murder mysteries, but you need a little bit of lightness to it. This'll do it. So The Briar Club takes place at a boarding house called the Briarwood House, I think, or the Briarwood, in the 1950s. And we are following, I believe it's 5 or 6 different women who are living there. And we start with, from the perspective of the house, we got a sentient house, which I loved. We know that someone was murdered. There's a body in the attic, okay? So we are starting with the police arriving and trying to figure out who done it. Then we rewind, I think 5 or so years, and we follow each woman. I think like 1951, we see one perspective, and then 1952, we get a different, 1953, etc. So I loved all of the characters. They were all very distinct women dealing with very different trials and tribulations in their lives. And there was a lot of history tied in. So we're dealing with the Rosenberg and like McCarthyism of it all. So there is, unfortunately, also, I must say, not by any of the characters we're supposed to be rooting for, but there is a lot of anti-Semitism and racism. It's the 1950s, Washington, D.C. But talking about communism, talking about Judaism. And then there's also the Korean War. We're also dealing with things like the mob and anything that's considered kind of an alternative lifestyle in the 1950s. So all of the homophobia that comes along with that, and testing nuclear weapons, and just like so much was packed into this book. And then we also know that as the story gets closer to our present day, there's going to be a dead body at the end of this story. And I just really had a great time with it. The murder was really in the background the whole time. It was much more just a work of historical fiction about these women who are so different, but they end up coming together at least once a week to make dinner in one of their apartments. And this is the Briar Club, as it were. So there was this just like coziness to it. And I just really, really enjoyed it. So that is the Briar Club. And I will be reading much more of this author's work. So, okay, last 2. I read Every Heart a Doorway. There is a trans readathon going on as I'm talking about this. I posted about it on Instagram. As you are watching this video, it is ended. It ended on March 31st because that is the day of trans visibility. And so with my lack of time, I ended up picking up a novella. And we have a trans main character. I read Every Heart a Doorway. This is an interesting one because I felt like this was so heavy-handed when it came to the themes. And then I was wrong. Or maybe I wasn't. I'm not sure. This is basically about, we are at a boarding school-esque location where children are sent to recuperate from this event in their lives, where basically they believe that they went through a door, entered a fantastical place. They either accidentally left or they were kicked out or something, and they were brought back to the real world. And their parents are like, our child is not the same. Our child is messed up, okay? They believe these crazy things. Somebody needs to help them. And so they go to kind of recuperate from this ordeal. And all of the kids at this boarding school want to go back. There's apparently another boarding school for kids who do not want to go back, like actually had a horrible time. But these are all kids who felt like they could finally be themselves and finally be accepted for who they are in this other world, through this other door. It quickly becomes a bit of a murder mystery as well. Can't escape murder this month, apparently. So yeah, at first I thought that the doorway significance was like a little heavy-handed, but then I felt like maybe it wasn't. And then I was just questioning everything. This is also a series. I am not sure how I felt about it. I thought the ideas were so interesting. The worlds could be broken into, instead of like northeast, southwest, it was like logic or nonsense. And then not like chaotic good or neutral good. Like I don't know. There were so many world building elements to it that I found really interesting, but I can't say that I actually loved the book. I was intrigued by it, but I don't think I actually really enjoyed it, especially once we got to the ending. And I wish, I mean, maybe because this is a series, we'll learn more, but like, I wish we knew more about the woman who runs the boarding house or the boarding school. I just ended up having a lot of questions. And again, I don't know if that's because this turns into a series, but yeah, a lot happened in very few pages. And I'm just still sitting here a little confused. So that is Every Heart a Doorway. But what's interesting is that this author uses different names when she's writing in different genres. And she actually wrote Into the Drowning Deep, which is a book that I really, really enjoyed. So when she writes horror, I think I really like their work. But this one, I don't know. If you have further insight into Every Heart a Doorway, let me know. Should I have continued the series? Does that make more sense? I just wasn't blown away. So that is Every Heart a Doorway. And then what I tried to finish, our last book, what I tried to finish before the end of the month, did not succeed, is Weavingshaw. God, I have been waiting for this book for so long. Libby telling me that it is available soon for months. Crazy. Anyway, finally got my hands on it, finally started reading it. I think I'm at maybe 70%, 67%. Yes. Ooh, this book. I am so excited to see more work by this author. This is a debut. So excited to see more work by this author because there are so many passages that are brilliant. And I think the world that they created is so interesting. Unfortunately for me, the pacing is just a little off. It's been very slow for the first, I would say, it was like 150 pages where I noticed that like, okay, things are starting to go. We are following a girl named Lena who has the mysterious ability to see the dead. She doesn't know why she can. Nobody knows why she can. And it's a secret that she's kept for a very long time. But her brother has some horrible, horrible illness and needs medication that they simply cannot afford. So she goes to the Saint of Silence to share her secret, to trade it for medicine, because this Saint of Silence takes confessions and secrets, and if they're good enough, he will pay you for them. But if you lie, when she tells him her secret, he is like, fabulous, I will give you the medicine, but you're also going to have to work for me. I've got a ghost I need to find. So the setup in general is really exciting. I just think that the beginning, as she's like working for him, a lot of time passes, like I think many weeks pass, and it felt like we are told that she's working, but we never see a lot of it. We see like one or two clients come in, but we're told that there's a lot more going on, and then we never actually get, we just got to Weavingshaw at like 60% of the book. So now it's kind of interesting. We are searching for a particular object that will help us find this ghost that we're looking for. I also think it took to about 50% for us to get any sense of relationship between the Saint of Silence and Lena. Lena also was kind of a character that didn't really come into her own until about 30 or 40% of the book, I really couldn't get a handle on her, partially because I think it was a defense mechanism. She hides a lot of herself. So I do think that might have been intentional, but I just couldn't get a handle on Lena. I think where the writing really shines is that Lena and Rami are refugees living in, I believe the country is called Moorland. They fled their home country because there was a very violent revolution going on, made it to Moorland due to their refugee status. They're treated like dirt. And so the way that she talks about that and kind of like the life choices that people have to make because of this, just the various ways that you kind of lose yourself. Yeah, I think there's a lot of positives, but it's just kind of taking a really long time to get going. There's also now, the world also has demons, and that's kind of mentioned vaguely, but then it actually becomes a big part of the plot about 50% of the way through, and it felt a little sudden that, oh, okay, we've got an entire underworld and demons to deal with now. So I feel like it's just been a little clunky to read, but I feel like it really is hitting its stride at the 60% mark. I really like Lena and the Saint. And again, I really think that Rami is my favorite character, her little brother. So I'm hoping that it's only going to go up from here. I still have like 150 pages left, but I would still give it a go. Definitely there's a lot that's shining in here. Just the full picture isn't quite coming together yet, but that could change once I get to the end. That is Weavingshaw. And for those of you who have been on my back about reading The Red Winter, yes, it finally came in from the library. That will be my next read. I'm very excited. I've got a lot of books that I want to read. It's a wonderful problem to have as I sit here, as there's literally like piles of books inching closer to me. I think that April will be a really great reading month. It is sitting outside and reading weather. I can't wait. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on anything that I read. Again, if there's any spoilers, please put spoilers and then ... And let me know if I should be adding any books to my never-ending TBR. I will catch you guys next time, and I'll update probably on Instagram my like final thoughts with Weavingshaw. Also, if you want to see the cherry blossoms in Gyeongju here in Korea, I'm actually getting on a train tomorrow with my friends. We're gonna go down and hunt some cherry blossoms. It's finally spring here, so I will always link my main channel down below, Caricakes. And yeah, thank you as always. Once again, thank you to Book of the Month. You can use the code 100 to get your first book for 100 cents. And okay, yeah, I'll be linking everything that I mentioned down below as usual, and I will catch you guys next week for our thriller monthly video. We will be reading My Husband's Wife, and when I tell you the amount of Connor story edits that will be in this, get ready, strap it. I will see you then. Love to you always, and catch you later. Bye.